All right, welcome everybody. Welcome. Everybody, relax, breathe, take it easy, kick back. We're not going to be as heavy today on genocide like we are most shows. We'll probably get into more genocide stuff tomorrow, but today will be a little bit of a light and easier show. But it'll be a fun one. It'll be a fun one nonetheless. Again, the serious shows are really taking a toll on me, and I'm sure they're taking a toll on you too, but what's happening is indescribably terrible in Gaza. But again, we'll have a big old segment on that tomorrow like we normally do on the show. But today, we're going to dive into some simpler things. So I'm going to get to a poll that just came out about New Hampshire on the Republican side. Look, it's a big deal. I think it's a big deal. I'm curious what all you guys think, but my takeaway is that this has the potential to be a game changer. Okay, let's say that. Then we'll get into, MSNBC is just, they're going full North Korea style defense of Joe Biden. And it is wild to watch. So we'll get to that. We'll also get to, guys, it looks like Joe Manchin, for real, is going to run for president. This new story, I can't say for sure yet, but I'm going to go, we're already at like 42% chance he runs. Like, it's almost a coin flip at this point. There's now this piece of evidence is pointing massively in the direction of he's going to run. And then later on in the show, we have Republicans defending Trump, repeatedly quoting Adolf Hitler. Okay. All right, so everybody do me a big favor. Please click like. Please subscribe to the channel. It means the world if you do that. It helps us in the algorithm. It doesn't cost you anything at all. And remember, I've never had a conversation with an advertiser, so you guys help make this show run. You can support the show on Patreon below, or you could tip with the thanks button. And thank you to everybody who does that. It really means the world to me. Thank you so much. You're basically proving that it's possible to do a show like this and never have any conversations with any advertisers, which I don't know if there's anybody else in the space who really does that. I think we may be the only one or one of the only ones. So anyway, let's go ahead and dive into it here. So this poll just came out from CBS. This is wild, man. This is wild. Nikki Haley had a massive surge in New Hampshire. Now, let's be clear. Massive surge is relative to what the numbers were before, which means what? Trump was leading by roughly 17,412 points, and now that's down a little bit. So Trump still has a 15-point lead. But look at this. Trump's at 44. Haley's at 29. She is now absolutely draxing Ron DeSantis almost by 20 points. DeSantis is all the way down at 11%. Christie is nearly tied with DeSantis at 10%. Then you have Ramaswamy at 5 and Asa Hutchinson. I love how they put him in there. That's hilarious. He's at 1. Didn't he drop out? Did he drop out? I don't know if he dropped out. We know Doug Burgum dropped out, but did Asa Hutchinson drop out? I don't know. I don't even know if he knows if he dropped out or not. But anyway, this is a double-digit surge for Haley. This is a double-digit surge for Haley. And most of those points actually came out of Trump. I believe DeSantis only dropped like 2 points, it was. Most of these points came from Trump. So this is the biggest surge that we've seen yet in this race in any particular state. The closest we've been to any situation like this before is that brief moment after the midterms when Republicans came to their senses a little bit and realized that Trump was a problem for them electorally, when DeSantis absolutely won by miles in Florida. And, you had the headlines in the New York Post calling him the future, and everybody was saying, well, he's obviously going to be the one. There was a brief moment where DeSantis passed Trump in polling for the primary. It was a brief moment, but it was there. And I remember thinking, oh, okay, Republicans came to their senses a little bit, and they realized that Trump hurts them in elections, and so they have to go in a different direction, so they're going to be smart, and they're going to pick DeSantis if they care even a little bit about electability. Well, it turns out over time they didn't care at all about electability, and DeSantis fell off a cliff. He's not the best in terms of campaigning, but this Haley surge, I got to be honest with you guys, I didn't see it at all. I didn't see it coming at all. But what happened was she had a couple of good debates, but most importantly, you know what happened? The media, the right-wing media, started being more sympathetic to her. Liberal media started being more sympathetic to her. But more importantly, it's the money. It's the Koch brothers, or one of them is dead, so it's just the Koch brother. He started funding her, and she started getting a lot of billionaire right-wing backers. That's what happened. That, I think, was the turning point. And so now she's got the money. She's got a more sympathetic media. She had a couple good debates, so that raised her profile a little bit. And you have everybody say, oh, she's serious. Oh, she's serious. She's serious. She's serious. She's serious. She's serious. It's even though Nikki Haley has fewer percentage points at the national level than Marianne Williamson. Marianne's at 14%. Nikki Haley, last I checked, was at like 12 or 10% nationally. So Marianne Williamson is actually more serious in terms of her national percentage in her respective election, but she's not treated that way at all. Nikki Haley is definitely treated that way. So, but all those factors mixed together, now you see a surge in New Hampshire. Now, there is one other thing to point out here when it comes to New Hampshire. New Hampshire is a little bit of like a rogue sort of state where they like to buck trends a little bit when it comes to these elections, and sometimes they pick interesting and unique candidates. They don't go with the standard like, hey, the one who's leading and almost certainly going to win. And so there's a little bit of that going on there. So I don't know. My question for you is this. Does this matter? Right? Because this is closer to Trump than we've seen anybody in a very long time, but it is also still 15 points behind him. But we still have time, like, okay, let's just say this. What if Nikki Haley somehow pulls out a W in New Hampshire? Does that then matter? Right? Is it like, okay, now she won, now she's got momentum, now she's got more big money coming in, and now Trump hits a wall in those states and falls off a cliff in the ones after New Hampshire, and she ends up actually making a race out of this. Now, by the way, also super important, this is probably the most important point, right? At a certain point, the donors are going to pull the ripcord on all the other candidates, and they're going to say, there's only one horse who has a chance, it's Nikki Haley, you're going to back that horse. So there's a world where DeSantis drops out, backs Haley, Christie drops out, backs Haley, Ramaswamy Vivek would endorse Trump because he's a little sycophant and he sucks up to power. But like, there's a world where everybody except Vivek drops out and endorses Haley. Then does it matter, right? Because look, I'm still of the belief that based on all the polls, Trump is still way too far ahead for this to even be a real race. But this is the first sign of any sort of crack in the armor that we've seen at all. And so I'm curious what you guys think. Does this matter? And even in a scenario where, let's say, all the other Republicans drop out and endorse Haley, and she wins in New Hampshire, would that even matter? Or would we have a situation like we saw in 2016 where Ted Cruz won Iowa, but Trump pretended like he won. He said Ted cheated. Classic Trump stuff, which we shouldn't overlook, by the way. That's insane. But like, it didn't matter because then Trump still went on to win in all the other states and just like curb stomped his way to the nomination. So I'm not covering this segment to be like, oh my God, this is a huge deal. She's a real challenger. I'm more asking the question, do you think she could be a real challenger? Like, this is closer than I've seen anybody in New Hampshire, but it's still a 15-point lead. And look, the fact of the matter is, I think there's almost like a bias against Trump in these conversations because it's like, if it was anybody else with a 15-point lead, we'd be like, oh, it's over. But since it's Trump and he had like a 40-point lead, now the fact he's down to 15, it's like, oh, maybe. But I don't know. It might be a silly conversation overall anyway, but does it become real if Haley wins New Hampshire? Is it like, no, we're actually going to have a race now? Because I will say this, every single poll shows that in a race between Haley and Biden, Haley destroys Biden. It's not even close. Trump is the only Republican candidate who would make it like there will be an actual race with Biden, where there's a chance that Biden could win. All the other Republicans, they would crush Joe Biden. And so, is there any world in which the Republican primary base comes to their senses? Because there's another, what was it? I saw an article the other day. There's another interesting piece of evidence where there are Republicans who say they support Trump, but they do it more for social reasons to get along with family members and friends who love Trump. But in secret, they're like, actually, I'm going to vote for one of the other Republicans. That's really interesting. It's almost like the opposite of the effect that they had in 2016. In 2016, there was like a secret Trump vote where people are afraid to come out of the closet and say, I support Trump, but they went and voted for him anyway. There's, at least based on that one article I saw, there's some indication, I don't know if it's copium or not, but there's an indication that could be the opposite in this scenario, right? That it could be people, if you're a Republican, you feel like you have to, oh yeah, I love Trump, to fit in with your friends and your family and your social groups. But then in secret, actually, I'm going to go vote for Nikki Haley, right? Or actually, I'm going to go vote for one of the other ones. And so that's another piece of evidence to consider in the conversation. But, all right, I'll ask one more time. Do you think this is real? Does this poll make you stop and go, And if Haley wins, then are we off to the races for a real race, right? I don't know the answer to it, but I will say this was a bit of a surprising poll because you got all these other polls where Trump's up 40 points, and now this one is like, she's sort of nipping at the heels just a little bit. I'm really curious to see what happens. But the final point, look, it drives me so crazy, right? Because, okay, let's say, hypothetically, Nikki Haley does somehow manage to make the world's greatest comeback and beat Trump in the primary. Guys, she is the most Republican of all time. Like, even the limited ways that she even goes after Trump, she goes after him by saying, "Sir, you increased the deficit and the debt by a lot of money. How dare you?" Like, that's the stuff that she says. So in other words, it's not like she's more reasonable than Trump. The only area where she's more reasonable is, I'm sure if she lost, she would actually step aside. She wouldn't try to steal the election. But outside of that, on the actual policy, like, she makes a point to say, I'm actually worse than him in every imaginable way. And, like, that drives me crazy. That, like, the idea of getting back to sanity at this point would be like, let's go with this person who's just George W. Bush in a pantsuit. It's insane. I mean, the party, I hate to be that guy, but you look at it and it's like, this is beyond irredeemable, right? There's nothing there that, like, even a post-Trump GOP, it's not like, oh, wow, they come to their senses, like Biden said, right? Like, oh, the fever will break, they'll be good. Please. Nikki Haley's the future? No hope, son. None. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.